If I could teach the whole world one thing, it would be the power in trusting your intuition. So much gets led astray because we don't trust our inner knowing and how to access it. And that's the goal here. The Empowered Intuitive is here to bridge the gap in your spiritual knowledge, to open your mind and give you permission to decide what's best for you and the world around you. And I'm here to be real and silly and have fun while doing it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Intuitive podcast. I'm your lovely host, Love. And today we are talking about a really fun topic for me, being a psychic medium, connecting to people who've passed on from this mortal plane as we know them. I have dealt a lot with death. And I wanted to talk about what happens when you die from my perspective, from my personal perspective. I've had actually a few interesting death stories or things that have happened to me, especially after being a psychic medium. I've also had clients that I've connected with their past loved ones and cleared out like shadow people and lingering spirits. I've connected to ghosts and things that don't want to move on from this mortal plane. I've connected to pretty much the whole gambit of all these things. And it's such a hot button topic, especially with like religion and humans having the fear of the unknown. So this is, something that people have tried to figure out for a long time, that humans have become like kind of obsessed with, right? And it's actually like, I don't know, I just think it's very interesting how different the common knowledge of heaven and hell and what religion, more popular religions, create in terms of fear is something I have never encountered as a psychic medium, as someone who's connected to people who've even committed suicide or murder. These really intense sins that you can never be absolved from, like committing suicide is like the biggest sin that the church, says. So, I've never seen anyone burning in hell. I've never had a soul tell me they were suffering eternally in a Dante's Inferno type of situation. But I do think that there are some parts that are interesting and maybe could be interpreted as true. So yeah, I just wanted to get into all of that. This is really, like I said, a lot of my personal experience, a lot of my experience as a reader. And also I've done a lot of research in different cultures and different like documentaries of people who have passed on the operating table and come back to life. I've met people who are considered walk-ins. So all just different types of stuff. So I wanted to break it down. And if you have any other questions that pop up, please like leave it in the comments. Go to our social media page, ask, because I do want to start doing like a people can leave questions that they want me to answer. Even if they're like psychic questions or things that you want me to look into, and doing like one per episode. I tried to do it a long time ago when I originally started my podcast, and I feel like I didn't have enough people listening, or people with questions or anything. So I just stopped doing it, but I do want to bring it back. So if you have any questions, please, any question is a valid question. I hate this like belief that like your question is stupid, or you think that I'm gonna like belittle you or something like that because of your question. I am a teacher at heart. I teach intuitive development. I teach in therapy. I teach people how to love themselves, how to let go, how to take care of themselves. I've taught people how to connect to the Akashic records. I in college taught like a intro class for freshmen. So I'm just naturally a teacher. I also in college I trained people how to use the wood shop and the metal shop tools. So as a teacher for years, I have learned that there's no wrong answer, no stupid question, because everyone learns differently. And if that is just something that you need to get the answer to, that's fine. I'm not here to stand in your way. And I also recently learned that, especially for neurodivergent people, if we have a question, we can sometimes get, our brain can get stuck on needing to answer that question in order for us to move forward and understand the information, even if the question is like not related. So that made like a lot of sense for me in regards to like learning in school and how, like, you know, you're like, why do we have to do this? But what does it mean? But what about this? And the teacher's like, just because, like, get over it. And it's like, I'm still struggling to grasp this concept because my question wasn't answered and I can't move past it. So that has been really interesting, learning that. So yeah, just putting that out there in the beginning. Whatever questions you have, no matter how ridiculous, like, please, I can choose. I can make my own decision if I want to answer your question or not. But you got to shoot your shot. That's something I learned in middle school, and it has very much so helped me in my life. Just shoot your shot. Okay, so I tried to make notes on this so that it kind of flows from like right at death to slightly after to what happens if you've been dead for a long time. I will say, like, I'm very comfortable with these topics and things. I wanted to be a pathologist. My son is in the eighth house of death and rebirth. So I spend a lot of time being very comfortable in these spaces where a lot of people create fear and false beliefs about darkness and all these things. So, the first thing I actually wanted to open up with is a more recent thing that happened to me last year. My grandfather passed away, and I was there in the room in the hospital with my other family members, like sitting around him, in on the hospital bed, and he had been intubated, so he was like forced to be put into a coma because he had a bunch of stuff with his lungs. And I'm not going to get into all of that, but you know, my family knew that I was psychic, and they were like, you know, what information can you get from him, because he wasn't coherent. And we were trying to decide, like, what should we do to honor his wishes, and do we keep him alive, blah blah, blah, all these different things. I intentionally connected psychically to him to see if I could communicate with him and see why his body was still holding on, because they were saying, like, once they do the intubation, it could be a couple, you know, minutes, it could be a couple months before his body lets go. And he was still holding on for a number of reasons, regarding like our family, like my grandma and different things like that, because he was the like stability in our family. He was the caretaker, the provider in our family. And I told him, you know, it's okay to let go. We'll make sure that your wishes and the things that your body is still holding on for, and your spirit is still holding on for, will be taken care of. And I called forth, because my grandfather is Jewish, so I called forth the angel of death, which is in that religion, to come and collect him. And I literally felt in, like, I was holding his hand. I felt like I needed to have physical connection with him in order to feel these things, because it's also emotional for me, you know, and doing psychic things when you're not grounded can be a little tougher. And I invited the angel of death to come and collect him and bring him to his final resting place, because Judaism doesn't believe in hell. It's just Christianity and Catholicism, amongst other religions that have now been created. And I literally felt the angel of death come in, and I could see they were like floating on top of him. And I knew like his family members were also there, which is very common when you die. Either it's like angels or your family members that come and collect you. They help you walk over to the other side. And they kind of like, because it's very disorienting when you pass away, which I'll talk about. It takes like a soul. They say like as a reader, you shouldn't seek to connect psychically with someone who's passed on for at least 2 weeks after they pass, because during that time they're still finding their way, they're still transitioning to the other side, to the fourth dimension, and it can be very jarring and very disorienting for them depending upon how they died and what they went through, who was there to collect them and who wasn't. And also it can be very jarring for the person that is wanting to connect with them, like the family member or the loved one that's still here on earth, because you might connect to them, thinking like, I just want to make sure they're okay. Like, can you just tell me that they're okay? And then you connect and they're still trying to figure out where they're going and what they're doing, which I'll explain what happens after you die. And then you get scared because they're like, I don't know where I am, what's going on, like I'm lost. And then your family member that is here on earth is like, oh no, like it was a mistake, my family member passed away and from the wrong reason, or blah, blah. Like, no, that's not the case. It's just like it takes our soul a minute to readjust and to reconnect with our higher self and all these other pieces. So I saw the angel of death kind of like come in, and I knew his other family members were there. My biological grandma passed away when I was very young, so there was a lot of people to collect. My grandpa, his sibling, he was the youngest, so he still had his siblings that all passed away and his parents and so on. And I got this. I told him it's okay. It's okay to psychically. I told him it's okay to cross over. You don't need to keep holding on. And literally like 30 seconds after that, he like took a deep breath and then he like flatlined, and I felt this like chill because I was still holding his hand. I felt this chill move through, like psychically I get chills, like it's like I definitely feel like it's an instinctual thing in my like medulla oblongata and my spine, and all the nerves that we have there. I get chills like in the back of my neck a lot, and up my spine. So I got this like chill, and I felt like that's him leaving his body, his soul leaving his body. Um, and so that was really interesting because I had never been fully present with a human when they passed away. I've done it for animals as well. Um, I A lot of the animals that I did it for, I wasn't already like, oh, I'm a psychic medium, so I wasn't really tapped in for that. I did it for a lot of our family pets growing up. My mom was like, I can't do it. This is too much for me. I can't be in the room. And I just always had this strong intuitive sense as a kid. I just felt like to leave your pet alone to die with like a veterinarian in their last moments just sounded like the worst fucking thing in the world. Which, come to learn now that TikTok exists, I've seen videos of a vet saying like that's like the worst thing you can do is to leave your pet alone because they're like in a strange place with strangers and they just want to be surrounded by their loved ones and their family when they die. So I'm glad that I listened to that because my mom was like, no, we're not going to go in the room. And I was like, could I go in the room? Like, I don't want our cat to just be alone when he dies. Like, what the fuck? So the only pet that I've been like a psychic medium and I've been present for has been my dog Suki, which if you're I always mess up on video. There you go. If you're watching the video as I awkwardly try and get my arm into the frame. That is her right there. The white dog. She was like my first like, this is my dog and I'm an adult and I'm responsible for this dog. I live on my own. I was there when she passed away, but I think I was just like too emotional to psychically be in any of that. But I got like 4 signs from spirit that day that she passed away, like reassuring me like you made the right call. This is what needed to happen. She was at the end of her life. Which was very, very, very comforting. I like wrote them in like my notes app so I wouldn't forget them. Um, so yeah, that was very interesting to me having like a firsthand experience. I low key always wanted to have one because I'm weird like that. And in Judaism, there's even a like secret society that, because of our customs, watches over the dead after they've died, but before they're buried. And my cousin is part of that. So I just feel like maybe it's a family trait. But there's a lot of different cultures and customs that believe in being there for the soul when they cross over, and making sure that they cross over to the right place and they don't stay here on this mortal plane. In Judaism, we have a custom, it's called sitting Shiva. And it is more for the person who is still here after their loved one has died. So it's a 2 week mourning process. You're supposed to not work, not like cook. You're supposed to like not like put on makeup and clean yourself and do all these things. You're supposed to just be with your grief, and people are supposed to come over from your community and bring you food and sit with you and talk to you about your past loved one, like sharing stories and things. But a part of this tradition is to cover all of the mirrors and reflective surfaces in the home so that the soul that's connected doesn't get trapped in the mirror and stay in the home and like gets pushed to cross over. I know it's also like a little bit for the person who's mourning, because like you're not supposed to be doing your hair and your makeup and looking nice and all these things. So like you're not supposed to be concerned with like, what do I look like? Oh my God, I look like I'm a mess, you know, like all of that kind of stuff. But I always found that very fascinating when I learned that as an adult, that like we even have like a my eyelashes are bothering me, sorry. We even have like a custom that is about allowing the dead to cross over and not having them get stuck here. So I do want to talk about that. What happens if you get stuck here? Because we do know that that exists. We have hauntings, we have poltergeists, we have ghosts and things that remain in this realm and don't choose to go to the other side. Now, this is more for like a traditional haunting. Spirit can still like give you messages or things and they're not like stuck here, right? They can still appear to you and they're not stuck here as a ghost. But there are some places that are haunted by ghosts. When I went to Colorado, there was this bar that like they're like known as like their whole marketing is like, we have a haunted bar. The location that the bar is in used to be a brothel, and I was very interested when we came. I was talking to like the hostess, and I was like, so what can you tell me about this haunting? Because Frankie and I like to go to like haunted places and see what we can feel and all that jazz. So this ghost, they told me she was a sex worker at the brothel, and she a little bit of a trigger warning, was unalived. She was murdered by one of the story. There's a few stories, but the main story, the main gist of it is that she said something kind of like derogatory, like she kind of just popped off on one of the patrons, and he like pushed her down the stairs because he got mad, because you know, men being men and their egos can't handle anything. And she died because of that. And so she was still in that space, and the second floor was the bar and the first floor was a restaurant, and they had this like back storeroom. And so I was asking the hostess, I was like, hey, I'm a psychic, like I'd love to know more about this, I'm intrigued. And she was saying that, you know, I was asking her like, where do you normally like see or experience this haunting? And she was saying like downstairs in the back like storeroom areas, there's this like vacant little area where when they're closing, they will often see, and they'll like put all the chairs and then they'll be moved when they come back like 5 minutes later and things like, so it's like an active haunting. And so I went to the space there and I was able to communicate with the ghost. And so this is like a common misconception that I feel for spirits that are still here. And I've even seen this with another they're like a couple that are psychic mediums that I interviewed in a very early podcast, the Eckharts, and they became like well known because they were called into this, I think it was like a mill or something like that was being haunted. And some spirits do not want to cross over. Some spirits, the traumatic event that has happened to them or the emotional connection that they have with the space, or like whatever happened in their lifetime, they are not ready to let go. And that's kind of what this woman that I spoke to in spirit, she was like, I don't want to leave here. This is my home. And that's a common thing as to why hauntings get out of hand, is because people anger the spirit and they don't realize like you're now cohabitating with the spirit. Like it's not your house. You don't live here. You and the spirit live here. And the spirit has lived here for longer than you. And for you to just come in and be like, get out. Like, imagine if you were living in your home for like 30 years and someone just opened the door with their own set of keys and they were like, you need to leave. Like, I live here now. Like, that would piss you off, right? You would be like, I live here. What do you mean? Like, this is my home. All my belongings are here. All my things are here. I have memories here. So a lot of the time, like spirits they get pissed and they act out because they feel threatened by the new owners or the new people that are there. They either feel like they're trying to kick them out or they're going to ruin the things that they love about that space. And so it's important, if you do live in a space that is haunted or near something that is haunted, not, and this excludes people, like hauntings for people. Like if a spirit follows you to whatever house that you go to, this is different. And you know, like, so speaking to them and honoring them and acknowledging them, this actually happened in the house that my mom moved into in Idaho. My stepdad was saying that when they moved in, there was like one other owner, and the woman died. There's of old age. And she was upset when they moved in because she wasn't sure if they were going to take care of the home and they were going to treat it the way that she wanted it to be treated. And he told her, like, don't worry, we're not going to do any of that stuff that you're afraid of. We're going to be taking care of this home. We're going to live in this home. We're going to love this home. And she never really appeared after that to him. So this spirit at the bar, I spoke to her and she was like, just give me some offerings. Like, give me some shots. Like, this is a bar. Leave me my little space down here. Because they were thinking of turning that room down below into like some like VIP room. And so annoying. Like every time I fix my thing, it goes back. And she was like being more active since they had the owners had those talks about it in the space. And so the employees were kind of like, I don't know if we should do this because the spirit is like not happy. And she was like, you know, I want to leave this space down here. They had like a little like altar little area set up for her. And she's like, this is my space. This is my home that I have. And I'm like sharing, you know, the rest of the space with you. So like, don't get rid of that and just give me some offerings every now and again and I'll be chill. And so I told like the hostess, you know, what she said and stuff. And she was like, oh, interesting. Because people don't realize like spirits do really like offerings. Human people who have passed on, they love offerings. There's so many different cultures that have some type of altar offering built in. It's, in my opinion, like a universal truth. Not every spirit, obviously, but they lived a human life. They want some of their human comforts, and they want you to remember them and to consistently acknowledge that you remember them through these offerings. That's like a really big piece. So yeah, I've talked to some spirits that are like, I like it here. This is my home. I don't see any reason to move on. I've also heard this theory that I do believe in, that like places where it's like really intense, like the South, plantations, like like the concentration camps in Germany and throughout the Holocaust, like intense war, or slavery or things like that, places where people suffer, like a lot of places that used to be like hospitals, like tuberculosis. When I was in Colorado, we did a ghost tour, and there's a place that like was really haunted, and it used to be like a space for tuberculosis. Like those places where it was just like very traumatic and very intense, what people experienced and suffered through and then died from, they tend to be more haunted. And there's this theory that spirits do cross over, but the energy, because we have to remember with anything spiritual, everything is energy, right? It's science. And energy is neither created nor destroyed. So if a very traumatic and intense, energetically charged event happened in that physical space, it can be hard to just, where does it go? It can't be destroyed. And if nobody like transmuted it or changed the energy via some kind of spiritual ritual or thing, um it's still there. So sometimes hauntings can, that's where it's more like the poltergeisty type stuff. Like hauntings can be portals in a sense, of energy that is trapped, of energy that is like really, really charged and has changed the energy of that space or the environment forever because of it. And so sometimes hauntings can be just that residual energy and not necessarily like someone's soul that is stuck there or has chosen to be there. The other thing that I wanted to talk about where you can get people to cross over, I was hired by a woman who was a psychic. She lived in her home with her daughter and her husband, and her daughter was young. She was like 2 or 3 at the time, something like that. And she kept seeing this shadow person in her home, and even her daughter would see this shadow person in her home. And she was like, I'm like, this shadow person isn't listening to me when I'm telling them to go away. I tried like doing like sage and all these different things. Like, can you help me out? And so I did a reading for her, and I connected to this shadow person, and I was talking to them. And at first it was just a shadow person. So I didn't know, like, no, I couldn't see any like discernible attributes of this person. I didn't even know it was a person, because sometimes shadow people can be like evil, like entities or things like that. And I was talking to the shadow person, and the more I was talking to them, the more they started to become human, and they revealed that they were just like this woman, and she was upset because she did some unsavory things in her life, and she was a mother, and she felt like she wanted to like apologize and atone for her sins, so to speak, for what she did to her children. And so she was holding on to staying in this realm as much as possible so that she could try and communicate with her children, so that she could feel like she could finally deserve to cross over, because she felt what she did, she needed to like apologize and all that stuff, and get a message to them. And that's why she kept appearing. So when spirits are trying to tie up loose ends before they are able to cross over, they will sometimes like appear in a way that will get humans attention. And so she was trying and trying, and just became like more and more and more like scary, so that someone would notice her. And didn't real she wasn't doing it like on purpose, but it was like a sort of like a byproduct. And she basically was saying like she was trying to get the family that was living there to contact her children to let them know, but like they didn't know who this woman was or like who her kids were. Like they were like, I don't know how to help you, because I don't know like who your kids are to be able to like message them and let them know. So I told her that if she crossed over, she could then do what a lot of spirits do and leave messages and signs for her children on the other side. Like she could learn how to do that in spirit, and she could then communicate to them that way and be there for them that way, and that would actually be more effective than trying to stay here and getting a human person who doesn't know her children or how to contact them to deliver a message. And she was like, oh. And so she started to appear as a woman. And then when she was open to that, I saw this like portal open of like glowing light. And there was like this walkway that like, it was like a ramp type walkway that extended down. And I like held her hand psychically as I walked her through, and I let her cross over that last bit on her own. And the family was like, yep, no shadow person after that. Like, we're totally fine. So sometimes that can happen when you die, where your soul has unfinished business that you need to attend to in this realm, and you aren't able to let go of like your mortal like physical form and body. So I wanted to cover those like kind of like outlier things first, and then talk about like what most people experience when they pass away and they cross over. So and this, like I said, is part of my personal experience, but I've also talked to other psychics and other intuitives from all different walks of life, and they all pretty much have the same answer as me. And I've also, like I said, watched those documentaries where people pass away on the operating table or something, and then they come back. So I'm going to talk about those types of people next. So there are many documentaries about it, and I do find it very fascinating. There was this theory that what you believe in this lifetime, like what faith you have, what religion you have, is what you see when you pass away. That I believe in, because I feel like it's all the same thing. Like if you look at religion, it's all the same thing, just slightly different. And whatever we believe in, we know for a fact that our brain creates our reality, right? Because we actually see upside down, and then the image gets beamed into our brain from our eyes, and then our brain flips it to be right side up. I know, if that's the first time you're learning about that, literally look it up. It is, I learned it in like anatomy class. It's fucking crazy. And so much of our reality and our perception is defined by our brain. I've talked about this time and time again, and I'll keep talking about it. If you're going to buy a car, you're buying a Subaru, all of a sudden you see Subarus everywhere on the road. You're going to rent a apartment, you're looking for rent signs, all of a sudden you see all these rent signs. Your brain is very powerful. Your brain filters for what you see and what you don't see, and what you notice and what you don't notice. That's why they talk about manifestation and like your thoughts form your reality. There is very much so truth in that. And I think that that gets translated to when we die. If you believe your whole entire life that there will be a man with a beard that looks like Charlton Heston or something, like waiting for you on the other side, then that is what you will see. Because in these documentaries of people who've passed away for a couple minutes and come back to life, there were people who were atheists and they didn't believe in anything. And when they passed away, they said it was just black and it was nothing. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It wasn't evil. It wasn't scary. It wasn't happy. It was just nothingness. And I think that is potentially what some people see when they die, although I don't think it's true psychically. I think it could have been that they were in some like waiting purgatory room, and because they didn't have like a faith in like some like past loved one or angel or God coming for them, they were just kind of waiting in nothingness until they came back. Because the people who are religious, when they pass away and they come back, they do describe, a lot of them describe like a light opening up in some kind of portal space. And some people see an angel, some people see their past loved ones. Some people just hear like an omniscient voice. And I think that these are unique experiences because these people did not fully pass away. So like yes, they like scientifically their heart stopped and they died, but their soul's journey was not over in this body in this lifetime. So I think it's interesting that we base a lot of what happens when you die scientifically on those people's accounts, because I do think like I'm providing context and saying that it's probably not all 100% correct, because those people's souls were not meant to die at that moment in time, so they did not see the entirety of their own true death experience, because it was fated that they were supposed to come back to life. So from like a higher level perspective, right? So they saw what they needed to see, or they saw what they were able or allowed to see while they were waiting, basically. Because a lot of these people describe like their light or the voice or their past loved ones telling them like to go back into their body. A lot of these people sort of have like a out of body experience too, where they're like floating above their body and they're looking at themselves from like a third person. And so it's like their soul is kind of like lifted out of their body, and I do believe that's what happens when you die, is you kind of like lift out and you see it from like a higher level perspective. But then they get called back in. They hear like you need to go back into your body, and so then they go back into their body. So I did want to talk about that, because I feel like when we do talk about what happens when you die, a lot of the fear of the unknown, people like to go towards the scientific provable things, and people's firsthand accounts who technically have died and then come back feel the most stable to people, because it's like a provable thing. Um, but there's also been some other stories that I find very interesting. So I knew this very talented healer, and she, if you've never heard of this concept, she was a walk-in. So a walk-in is when you die and your soul like crosses over, and then another soul walks into your body comes back to life, but you have a new soul inside of that body, that it has like a new like perspective and outlook and like path. And I find the concept of walk-ins very fascinating. I do think that they are real, and I do think that they are soul contracts. I'm going to give another example that y'all can look up too. So this woman, she said that she believes, because she, as early as she can remember, she's like, my life started at this, I think it was like 4 or like 7, something very young. And she's like, I know for a fact, like I wasn't there from birth till those years. And I walked in at that age when my body died. And she, you know, being an Akashic Records reader and all that, she was able to look into these things. And she said the soul that was born into her body for the first few years of life, she believes was a like trans man. And she's older than me. She was like in her 60s. So she was like, I didn't think that that soul wanted to experience this lifetime of being in a female body, but being a man in that time period that I grew up. And so this accident that happened to her where she died when she was a kid, she believes that her soul made a contract with the original soul that was born into that body, sort of like, I got it from here, I'll take it over for you, and I will walk and live this path in this life. And she has been a very gifted healer since then. Like she has done like things where like she, when she was a kid, she would put her hand over plants and they would come back to life, like that kind of healing. And I think that that is a very real thing. It kind of is similar to like a changeling, if you've heard of a changeling in the Fae lore. I do have a friend that I think is a changeling as well. That's basically it's considered folklore, but I think it's true. That when you're born, the Fae switch you out with a Fae child, or like the soul. I don't know that part too much, if it's like the exact body just gets swapped or the soul gets swapped. But my friend, she was basically raised by the Fae. Her parents were like very absent in her life, and she just spent all of her time outside in nature in the forest, like learning from them. And she just has like the craziest, she's very gifted, very talented psychically, energetically, musically, like all these things. She's very connected to the Fae, and we figured this out, and I did an Akashic Records reading for her, and like I was channeling like stuff where she was like, is it true, like am I a fae? And there are these moments from her childhood that I was channeling that she was like, oh my god, I totally forgot about this, I can't believe, like this is crazy, like she was like screaming, she was like, oh my god, like in the reading. um and she's always had this belief that she's different and she's not human and all that kind of stuff. And I reminded her of like this memory when she was a kid where she'd look in the mirror and like try and like peel her face back because she was like, this isn't me, this isn't my skin. So, and she has like, we work together in this store, in the spiritual store in LA, and I swear to God, like people, a random person would walk off the street. She was working at the front desk, just walk off the street, walk straight up to the front desk, and tell her some like crazy psychic message that was related to whatever she was going through in her life, and then just walk out. And she would just be like it happened multiple times. Yeah. So that's another weird thing about death and souls and stuff. A little tangent. So the other one that I want to talk about it for a walk-in is this. You can actually look this up because this guy, he wrote a book about it. He got into a coma, and I'm now realizing I don't remember his name, and I can't tell you the book title. I'm going to have to put this in like the notes of the episode for you guys because I can't remember it, because I listened to it on a podcast. And I have in human design, I have all passive arrows, so my brain is more big picture than details. So I apologize for not knowing all the details. But basically, this guy, he was in a coma for many years in, I think it was like the 1800s or late 1800s. And when he was in this coma, he experienced all of these things that when he came out of the coma and back into his human body, he wrote down in a journal. And he didn't want to publish it as a book, but when he passed away, his children published it as a book, so you could read it. He traveled to the future. He was a walk-in in someone else's body who died in the future, like even before time now. Like I think it's like the 2200s, like 2200 something, if I remember correctly, because I'm not a detail-oriented person. And he described, basically, he woke up in this like futuristic hospital place, and the person's body that he walked into was laying on the table, and their best friend was there. And then he woke up and he was like, what? And the best friend was like, you're not my best friend, like who are you? Like they knew this is a different person, this is not the same person that I knew, like why are you in my friend's body? And so he spent a stint of time in that person's body living in the future, which I think is totally cool. It says that we did have another world war where a lot of people were wiped out, which I think is coming soon. And after that, the people that survived were very spiritual, and so this whole society was very spiritual. They believed in all the spiritual things, and the spiritual people were like the leaders of this society. They had like billboards and all that stuff. So he was describing like technology that exists now that didn't exist when he was alive, which is definitely a tell for like, well, okay, he definitely traveled to the future, and he's like telling the truth of this. And it was really cool because the society, you like work for like 10 years of your life as being productive part of society, a member of society, and then you just make enough money from that, and then you just get to do whatever you want to do for the rest of your life. Sounds like amazing, but we did have to go through, they said we had to go through some war first because of that. So that's like another example of like when you die, something else could happen to you. I just find that kind of stuff fascinating. I think it's like tangentially, at least tangentially related to what we're talking about. So what happens when you normally die? When you're not all these other scenarios and cases? Like I said, it takes some time for your soul to adjust. So depending upon the person and the circumstances for how they died, like was it accidental? Was it traumatic? Was it like they've been prepping because they had cancer for whatever, type of thing? Your soul will take some time to fully cross over. Now, when I say cross over, I think that there, at least from what I have seen, is a place that exists that is similar to what we believe heaven to be. I don't think it's like the pearly gates and like your soul is judged, and if like you did unsavory things in this lifetime, then like you get cast into hell or whatever. I don't I've never experienced that. As a reader, like I said, I've connected to people who have committed suicide in their lifetime, who have done unsavory things. None of them have ever described their soul as being in any kind of hell related type place. So I do want to say, like, that is false. And I think that obviously we know a lot of religion exists to control us in this human plane. So I do think that a lot of this stuff is made up by humans. And how can we know? Because we're still alive when it happened, right? When we make up these rules about what happens when you die. I believe that the concept of hell was originated by Catholicism, Christianity, and like just just taken and run with, basically. Like it was like, oh, we're going to scare people into believing that if they do these certain things, they will suffer forever. And we're going to scare people into believing that like this lifetime is like this kind of like test or whatever for this grander thing that comes after. I know that like Greek and Roman and those people like had like the whole Dante's Inferno, but I think that's more metaphorical to describe the process of suffering and the process of atonement and the ego and this, like, yeah, I think it's more metaphorical. Um, I think that some humans do fully believe in that, and there could be a chance that like when they die they try and go there to hell because they think that's what they deserve. Um, but largely I've never felt that God or source or whatever higher being that is up there aims to punish us for what we've done in this lifetime. Now, there is sort of an atonement school that exists that I've had multiple people who've passed on when I connect psychically tell me about, and multiple intuitive and psychic people tell me that they know about or they have heard or tapped into psychically. So there is a process that people have to go through when they die, depending upon how they died and what they did in their lifetime. So the person that I connected to in spirit that committed suicide, it was their son who like wanted to connect, and the guy who died, he was like an absentee father, and so he just wanted to have some closure about his father. And he knew that the father committed suicide, and he was curious about like where he was and what all he was doing, and the father just kept saying like his soul was going through training. He kept showing me that he had like a lot of work to do before he could re-enter the normal flow of what happens when you die and even be reborn. So what other people have told me is like it's like this training school that you have to go through depending upon like it's like different things. It's sort of like self-paced course, I guess, where it's like if you were maybe a serial killer or something, like you would have to do a lot of work, go through a lot of schooling, quote unquote, before you could then move to the next phase in your soul's development. And I think like if maybe you were supposed to, I don't know, like learn some lesson or achieve some goal or something in your lifetime and you didn't, like you like ran away from it or you avoided it, you will still have like some kind of like schooling, but it won't be like as long or as intense as those people that maybe like did like really bad things in their lifetime. So I feel like it's something like that where it's like a spectrum of how much you have to work through and move through based on what your life choices and decisions and life path were in that lifetime that you were in. And I'm a firm believer of like before you're born, your soul makes contracts, makes agreements with various people and energies and all that for what you are meant to learn and grow and experience in this lifetime. I think like I'm a firm believer of if your soul chooses to have a human life, it's because you truly are here to learn and grow, because it's one of the harder lifetimes that you can have is being human. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, like your trauma happened for a reason and like it's a gift. Like I don't see it as a gift, but I do see it more as like a karmic balance where like if someone wronged you in one life, then your souls might make a contract for in another life to flip the tables, to make it even. Or like we choose our parents, right? Like before we come to this plane. And a lot of us have difficult parents, including me. I have really shitty parents. And at least for when I was growing up. And I always thought like, what the fuck? Like, why did I get these parents? Why did I get this reality? Like, this fucking sucks. But as I've grown, I've learned like I chose to have these parents and for some reason, right? Like because I wanted to go through this like gambit trial so that I could come out on the other side so strong in myself that I can then hold space for others. Like I'm just giving examples, right? It's not so cut and dry for every single person because we still have free will. We still have people that like they just decided to do some shitty stuff and it wasn't contracted for you to experience this intense trauma or this pain or abuse or whatever. It's just someone avoiding their own path and their own healing and avoiding humanity and acting out and causing unnecessary violence towards other people. And that's why I was saying like then you have in the next lifetime you probably make that soul contract to balance that scale. So I do think it's a little more ambiguous and not as cut and dry as maybe some of like the new age spiritual people talk about it in terms like, well, you were gifted like sexual abuse because you needed to. No, I don't think that's the case. And just because you make a contract with someone, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen this exact way. There's probably multiple different ways that these things can play out. Like I think my mother and I have a contract and I'm going to be doing some past life stuff because I recently in a bodywork session with I did a trade with Karen. Shout out to Karen. Her IG is Heal Now with the Body Whisperer. She's amazing. And I saw this vision of my mom and I in a past life as like sisters or like best friends or something. And my whole lifetime, she's called me her sister's name, like when she's angry or like, you know, yelling or whatever. And I always thought that was weird. So I think that there's some karmic contract between us two. Now, do I think that... So, how do I describe this? The contract happens before we're born, before we come into this realm. And it's made on a soul higher level, like a soul level, a higher self level. So when we come into this lifetime, we don't remember it. Some of us do. There are really crazy accounts. There's like this kid in India who remembered his past life, and he lived in like two villages over, and he like went to the village. It's like in a documentary, and like knew everyone's name and the family. Like, it was crazy. So there are some people that they are more connected, more open, especially when you're a kid. Like, I have a friend who, she would talk about like living in France when she was a kid, and her parents were like, how do you even know that like France exists? Like, what? So there are some people that can be more in tune to that. I will say, like, if you're a left angle cross in human design for your purpose, for your incarnation cross, you're going to be more in tune to that. That's just a known thing. But a lot less percentage of the population have left angle crosses. So once you come here, there are certain key moments that are fated to happen, but that's, again, case by case basis. And then you, because you don't remember on either part of the person in the contract, you can still bungle it up. Like, you can still have free will and choose to avoid the healing or the contract or the thing that was supposed to happen. And I think, like, for parents, obviously the main part of the contract is like, duh, I gave birth to you. So I do feel like a big part of the contract was fulfilled between my mom and I, but I do feel like there are parts that, like, she chooses not to. And I even made mistakes. I kept doing something that I wasn't supposed to do. So we can still have those pieces. So I do want to say that, like, I think a lot of like the death and birth process are very connected, understandably, and important to acknowledge when we're thinking about like what happens when we die, because we need to know what happens when we're born. So it's like, in order to know what we do when we cross over and we die, we need to kind of see like, what were we supposed to have done? What was necessary or what was asked of us, so that when we're finished with our life, it's sort of like you had an assignment, you went out on assignment studying for years, and then when you came back, you then assess like, did I do all the things that I said I was going to do? Did I succeed? Did I fail? Yada, 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 depending upon the person's individual journey. So I think that that's really important to note, that like some souls, they then regroup and then they're like, oh, I didn't, I should have done that. And I need to go. And then that's why you go through that like school training thing where you're learning or understanding or atoning for the mistakes or wrongdoings or missed opportunities or fears or different stuff. You have to kind of catch up in a sense. Now, I don't think that this school ends or fixes the cycle that maybe you missed in this lifetime, because I've seen that as a past life reader and past life channeler, that our soul will work through things over multiple lifetimes. We can carry wounds or fears or dreams or abilities or different things that like there's this is getting very meta. So there's like things that you're supposed to do on a soul level for like your human life, and then there's things that you're supposed to do on a soul level like for your soul's growth. And so there can be like obviously a mix of all those things when you're in this human lifetime. Like for me, being a psychic, I have been psychic in other lifetimes. I have had abilities in other lifetimes. I have been a leader in spiritual community in other lifetimes. Not every lifetime, but other lifetimes. So that to me indicates like that is a bigger soul mission and purpose that I am here to do across many lifetimes. Now, there are certain things that's like it happened in a more human sense, like in that lifetime for me. And maybe I struggled to work through it in that specific lifetime where it was supposed to happen. And so I'm carrying that wound or that lesson or that thing, or I'm carrying whatever I experienced just new in that previous lifetime in, and now my soul needs to work through and figure it out in the next lifetime. And some people, they get it in one lifetime. Some people, they get it in two. Some people, they're doing it for like 30 lifetimes. They're trying to fix this thing or learn this thing. And it just really depends on your soul. And its personality, its stubbornness, its fear, all those things, and then how much of it like you remember when you come into this lifetime, and then compounding that with the circumstances that you experience in this lifetime that either make it easier or harder, right? Like you could be, your soul could choose to be born into a rich family where you have a bunch of money and you don't need to worry about like scarcity and struggling. And so you can just like, boom, skyrocket into your goals, or go and do all the healing that you want to because you have unlimited money. And then there's some people where it's like you are born into like a poor family, and so the mission that you've always, or the dream that you've always been seeking, you maybe didn't get the opportunity to do that in this lifetime because you spent so much of your lifetime just trying to break the poverty cycle, or to, you know, like, I'm obviously using oversimplifications because with lives and with souls and with contracts, there's so many, it's like a big like interwoven web of things. And we know that the butterfly effect is true and real. And not only are we affected by collective things, by like individual things, so lots of things can shift, right? Like we, whoever is listening to this now, all the humans that exist on the planet right now, we've all entered into a collective contract to exist now during this time for a reason. We might not all be privy to that reason, but we have all decided to exist in 2025 so that we could whatever, for some reason, right? Like we've all chosen to exist in a time where capitalism and fascism and Trump as president and all these things are going on. So there is like that like larger soul collective even mission that we can be a part of. And that's where sometimes things can happen to us that feel random or like out of the blue, and it could be because you're fulfilling a contract on behalf of someone else's soul or on a collective level. And I've seen this in the Akashic records, like certain souls can be grouped together, sort of like this honeycomb structure. That's how I see it. And that's because they have like collective missions. And it doesn't mean that you're all doing the same thing. Like even in human design, my purpose is the same exact purpose as Mr. Rogers, but we're not doing the same thing. Like I don't also have a PBS TV show where I'm teaching children to love and respect each other equally, but I'm teaching you and all my clients and my community around me and myself to love and respect their body and their energy and their emotions. So we're doing the same thing, but different, right? So it's not as straightforward. So anyways, I went on like some crazy long tangent about that. So going back to the energy is neither created nor destroyed. Some people, when I connect to them, who've passed on, like let's say like my grandma passed away when I was like 3, I think. So there's been over 20 years since she's passed away. She has already reincarnated into another life, into another body, not on this realm. And she's like a powerful healer in another realm. So when I connect to her psychically, am I connecting to her in this lifetime that we knew her as? Or am I connecting to her where she currently is? Like that's crazy, right? Like what if your grandpa is a baby? Like how do you connect to a baby psychically? So because energy is neither created nor destroyed, and time, like energy is non-linear, we can have multiple lifetimes existing all at the same time parallel to each other. I am able to connect to the energetic essence of who she was in this lifetime that we knew her. That's what I'm doing when I connect to people who've passed on for others. I'm connecting to the energy of their soul from this lifetime as you knew them, because that still exists at the same time as the new life that they're in or the other place where they are or whatever. So we have the ability to access that because it's non-linear. Even though our humans, we create time as linear and our brains are very linear. that is something that sometimes baffles people. It's like, but what if they are in a new body already? You could still connect to them when they're in a new body, even if you know who that new body is in this lifetime. You can still connect to that version of them, that energetic essence of them, because largely their soul still exists in this higher level place, so we can access that, right? So I think that that's very interesting and very cool, because it really makes sense. And that's why I say, when I teach my intuitive development students, it's very important to be clear on who you are addressing, because I could address my grandfather's higher self and I will get a very different response potentially than if I address my grandpa as how I knew him in this lifetime and who he was as a human person. Very different perspectives. So whenever I connect, I'm actually going to take a drink of coffee because my throat is getting dry. So whenever I connect to, oops, I dropped something. I'm making sure I'm doing my notes properly. Yep, we're on the last two. Okay. Actually, no, we're just on the last one because I skipped to that last piece and I just told y'all that. So probably the moment you've all been waiting for. Whenever I connect to people who've passed on, it feels like they come from some heaven-like place. I see it a lot of the time, not every time, as like this giant backyard party where your past loved one is hanging out with their friends and family. And when I call out to them to connect them to the person that I'm reading for, it feels like they open this sort of like portal or pocket, and then they come out of that space where the backyard party is happening. And then they sit, well, I tell them that they have to sit in front of me. They can't sit behind me. They sit or float around in this like interstitial zone, which is like the astral plane, where I'm connecting to them. And then they answer questions. And then when they're done, I thank them and I invite them to go back to wherever they were. And they usually go back to that backyard party place. So that's kind of what I've seen, quote unquote, heaven as. It's sort of like very similar to how heaven is. Excuse me. Like your body is, when they appear, they will sometimes appear in the form that the person knows them as or remembers them as. But a lot of the time they're like healed. So it's like if they were very sick or they had ailments or disabilities, they don't have them anymore. A lot of the time they can be like younger looking when they appear to me, or like more spry. So they're not like eternally stuck in that version of their body that they left this world with. And they're not like suffering ailment wise. Again, they do have to work through certain things if they did need to get to that point. And it feels like they get to kind of just enjoy and be in this space for as long as they want. And they get to connect with the people that they want, if those people are open, also to connecting to them. When they pass on, they start to see things from a higher level perspective. So even though I just talked about they're still going to be their same human self, they are now detached from their human body for whatever time, at least 2 weeks before we connect to them. And they start to see life and see Earth and the human experience from a different perspective. And that's why we get the concept of exalted ancestors or healed ancestors. They're still like available for us to connect to, but they've done so much healing and work that they don't see things from this like limited human perspective. The way I see it when working with spirit, as humans, we're sort of like a horse with blinders on. Like we can't see all of it. And when we connect to spirit, they can see all of it. and they can give us a very different perspective and answer and understanding than we are even able to comprehend or to understand in this lifetime. And I will say, like, obviously, if you're like more intuitive or psychic, like, you can have different, like, I'm able to see that and know that, you know, I'm able to see more than others can, or to connect to and tap into more than others can. So when they're crossed over, they like, a lot of the time people will connect and be like, you know, are they going to forgive me for how I treated them? Or I feel really guilty because I wasn't there in their last moments. Or like, are they still mad at so and so and all this? And a lot of the time they like don't give a shit anymore. They're like, no, dude, like, I'm not going to hold this petty grudge that like I spent 30 years of my life holding, because now that I've crossed over and I've done my little schooling and I've seen, it's totally not worth it. And like, it's not even like something that matters in the grand scheme of things. So they definitely do have access to a different mindset or perspective. And a lot of the time they will apologize for things straight out the gate because they have learned and seen. But there have been some people where when I connect to them in spirit and they're still a little pissed at certain people, I think that that depends on a person's like personality, like if they're more stubborn. Or I've even had people where their religion still seeps through. Like, I've connected to someone wanted me to connect to their grandparents, and they said like, I don't know if they'll show up because my grandparents were like really religious. And it was really funny because the grandma and the grandpa showed up, but the grandma did not want to talk to me because she religiously doesn't believe in psychics, right? Because of the fear that religion creates around this. And so the grandpa was like, okay, I'll do the talking. And the grandma just kind of like sat there in the background and didn't really contribute too much because she was like, I don't do this. I don't trust this. And the grandpa was like, I'll ask her and then I'll share, or like, I'll just share based off of what I know. I'll speak on behalf of both of us. So you still do have people who are very connected to their beliefs in this lifetime. I've also had like people who are like, oh, like they didn't speak English, like, and I speak English, like, what will we be able to? Yes, I can still hear them. It's sort of like spirit will like translate it for them. There are some, like, they do speak in their language and then I sort of like understand what they're saying. Or sometimes I do hear it just as them speaking English, depending upon like the situation. But I think that's more to do with me than them. And what else can I say about when people die? I'm trying to think of like, yeah, so like no burning in hell. Um Definitely karma, definitely working through things, definitely atoning for things. But largely God is not going to shut you out and judge you and shun you, because God is, that's just not how God is. Um I don't really feel, I feel like the angels are way more present than God is in the other realms and way more available for information around the other realms. I feel like whatever source or the universe or God is really like this omniscient, ever present being that is in everything, everywhere, all at once, like that movie. And I feel like there are people who channel or who have connected to source, but it doesn't super talk a lot. It's more showing or feelings. And I do, like I said, I think people experience, they get stuff mirrored back to them based off of what they believe in that realm. Um, yeah, but I've never had anyone where I connect to them and they're like, oh my God, can you please help me? Like, I'm dying over here. Like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. But no, that never happens. No other psychic that I've connected to has said, like, I've like connected with has said that that happens. um yeah, it's like, oh, so it's either this backyard party or I feel like some souls are like doing their own thing, like in the other realm. Like they're learning things, they're exploring things that they wanted to do that they didn't get to do in their lifetime. They're connecting with famous people that they really liked. They're getting to experience without limits, right? And I feel like food is not as it feels like it's not necessary for sustenance there, but because humans, we know like food exists and we've grown up with it. Food can be like a there, but not necessary. Like I had one person where I connected to them in spirit, and they were like showing all these things that they were doing in the other realm, in the astral plane, in the fourth dimension and above. And it was crazy because the person I was reading for, I was like, oh, he's showing like cooking. And then the person was like, oh my God, he was a chef in this lifetime. And then I was like, he's showing like cooking with Anthony Bourdain. And he was like, oh my God, he loved Anthony Bourdain. So it's like you get to do those things that like you've wanted to do. Like you get to enjoy time when you're in this other realm. And I think that the thing that I still haven't fully figured out is if people, and I think it's case by case basis, which is why I think it's a little hard to figure out. I think some souls, they're like, I'm not super ready to be born into another body right away. So they take their time. I think some souls are also like, this is my last human lifetime. I'm going to be in another, type of realm, or type of being after this, or just for now. And then I think there are some souls, especially if you die traumatically of an accident or something really early, like if you die young, then you're like, I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to get at it. And I do think that certain lifetimes where you die young, there's like some contract about like, you need to do something, whatever your contract term is. And then once you do that, then you're out. And then you can like come back. Like I've seen that with like miscarriages or abortions. People get very, I know it's like a very emotional and triggering experience for the mother or the female body that is carrying, depending upon how you identify. But and for the father too, or the male person, whoever the parents are. But from a psychic perspective, the soul is just like wrong timing. But I've always seen and I'm able to connect to like babies that haven't come in yet, because like I said, we all create these contracts before we come. So it's like if you're meant to have a child, like before you came, you made that contract, right? Because you're born with all of your eggs, so like that person's already there within you, in a like soul contract way. And I've seen that like people are like, oh my God, like that poor soul has ended in their life. And it's like, no. Like if that soul wasn't meant to come during that time for whatever those circumstances are, or you were not ready for that soul, but they have already created that contract that they will be your kid, they will come again. They either will be born at a later time from you, from your womb, from your loins, or they will tend to get born into a member of your family. So I've had people where they've had miscarriages or abortions and then they didn't end up having any kids, but their like niece, they had like some crazy strong connection with their niece. And it's like, yeah, that was the baby that you almost had, and now it's here in your family. I'm one of those kids. My mom had multiple miscarriages and abortions, and then she had scar tissue because of them, and then she had to have surgery to be able to get pregnant again. And then here I am. I was the firstborn. Like, I feel like that's so Aries moon of me. I was like, I'm coming now. And then it's like, not now. Now. Not now. Now. Not now. Okay, now. Yes, now. So um yeah, that also is a part of like the death process that I just wanted to like highlight, because a lot of people, again, I understand it's very traumatic, very emotionally intense. I am not belittling or glossing over that. I'm just talking about it from the psychic perspective, and largely whenever I connect to psychic higher level information, it's not super emotional, because these beings and things see it from such a different enlightened perspective that I said they see the big picture. So to them, in the grand scheme of things, it's not so bad. Which is what I wish I could tell to all the people that are like against pro-choice. It's like, oh, you're killing a soul. Like, a soul does not die. A soul is like forever. Like, it will be there. It will come when it's ready. Like, I don't know what else to say, but like, you're not hurting or missing out on anything. It's just religion that creates that belief, you know? And a lot of these religions don't believe in reincarnation, right? I do past life readings. I have seen multiple times. I have had past life experiences in this lifetime, even as a kid, where there was one really crazy one where I was walking on the street with my mom, and this random stranger was walking towards us, and we both stopped and we were staring at each other, and it just felt like this surreal experience. And my mom was like, do you know this person? And I was like, no, do you know this person? And the other person was like, do I know you? Like, I've had like experiences where it's like our soul knew each other. What? You know? So I think so many people feel like there's people where they meet them and they're like, I feel like I've known you my whole entire life, because your souls have existed together before. Like, I think this concept that you just have one lifetime and you go to heaven, and if you are good, you just get to enjoy in heaven forever, is not correct. So many souls continue, have multiple lifetimes over and over and over again. And maybe when you're done having those lifetimes, you just get to chill in heaven or something. But like, I've seen people that have had non-human lifetimes. And I've even had a past life person that the life that I tapped into, they were like an immortal being that still exists, and now they're still here. So like, time is not linear. Like, energy is not linear in the way that we understand it in our limited perspective as humans. And I wish I could tell, I mean, obviously I'm doing it right now, but I wish I could tell like so many more people, like, let's work to get this episode out so millions of people can hear this. But like, it's not what they tell you. It's just not. Like, I just feel like the other episode that I talked about, how in How to Grow and Trust Your Intuition, how like most of the spiritual religious stuff that we know was garnered from someone who connected psychically or channeled God or angels or some kind of source energy, yet we're told like that we can't do that ourselves, and that's, you know, gonna put us in hell. Like, just upon that one principle, I would feel, I don't know if I'm going to trust this whole institution and what they stand for, because they're telling me to listen to someone who did something that I'm not allowed to do myself, that I would go to hell for. But when they did it, everybody needs to listen to them. It doesn't make sense. It's giving manipulation vibes, right? So it's very interesting to me knowing what happens when people die, and how unbothered largely they are about like the stuff that we are guilty about in our lifetime. Although I've had some people, like I said, who are still upset. They slowly start to, like, I had a client who, her father, she was the firstborn, and her father wanted a man to be the firstborn, and he treated her like garbage, and her younger brother gave him everything. And she asked, like, why did you treat me like this in my lifetime? And when they describe it, it's like the dad knew what he did was wrong, and he knew that he hurt his daughter throughout her lifetime. But he still was like, well, this was the belief that I had, and this was the tradition that I believed in, and this was the ideology that I believed in, and this is why I treated you this way. Like, he still knew the truth of what he did, and he started to understand and see from having this higher level perspective after passing away that it wasn't correct and it wasn't the best. But he was like, this is what I did, and why I did what I did. And he was like taking accountability, like standing on business about it. But at the same time, he was able to be like, yeah, I know that it hurt you, you know? So some people, it takes a little bit to admit it. And some people like still really fully believe in whatever it is that they believed in when they died or when they were alive. So it is very case by case. Bless you. My partner just sneezed. Um, but yeah, it's very very interesting. Like I said, a lot of people, they cross over. There's like family members there, and they kind of like greet you because like I said, it's very disorienting. So you're like, what is going on? And then it's like, there's your body. I'm here for you. Take my hand, let's go. And you already know these people and you trust these people, so that's where they show up for you. And they're also excited to see you again. So that happens. Sometimes it's an angel. Sometimes an angel's like, hey, we got to cross over. Trust me, everything will be okay. Or some kind of like light being thing. I've never seen or heard of like God showing up and collecting someone. I don't know if that's like a spirit is saying it's not really a thing. Um I'm asking spirit right now if like God judges them. And I'm thinking about like the Egyptians, like a lot of cultures have like a judgment thing. And they're saying that's like the like atonement piece, the work that they have to do. Um they don't get to do all the fun things that I've seen other people go through until they do that work. And that's why they feel like a little like, I still have work to do because they don't get to do all the cool stuff just yet. Um Trying to think what else does spirit, I'm just gonna ask what else does spirit want to share regarding this topic. They're saying don't be afraid. My spirit guides are really cheeky. They're they're using the mummy ride in Universal Studios Hollywood. Death is only the beginning. He says that in the mummy ride. Um they're showing this giant painted mosaic type thing. They use the word mosaic because it's like you put pieces at a time. So they're just showing this really beautiful like tapestry that just gets added to as time goes on. And that's sort of like the process of your different lifetimes. It's completing a timeline is what they said, a story. Um Timeline is to show it's more than just a story. It's they're trying to explain these concepts in ways that I'll understand it. Your soul's journey. Um they're saying it's overarching and expansive, and it's too much for one to know. It would be too much if we just knew it all. For a lot of humans, they wouldn't know how to take it. They also wouldn't know what to do if they were showed that their religion was wrong. They're just showing people going crazy, like running in the streets and stuff, seeing red. Um, they're saying it doesn't make sense to them. They need something to cling to because they can't cling to themselves. Mm. And Spirit is saying they're okay with that. They're just kind of exhausted with all the fear and the lies. but they know that this realm is a playground for all of those pieces. Yin and yang, darkness and light. There needs to be balance of energies. Balance not meaning 50-50, they're saying, but just there needs to exist an opposite for something. And they're saying we lean too much into the opposite. We lean too much into the bad stuff. But they don't really use those terms. I'm just using those terms. They don't see things as like good and bad. They're like, no, we do, but like they don't like to use those terms. They're saying it dilutes it too much, the meaning of the thing. They're just like, it's just, as a human, you have to go through these things and you have to experience these things. And that's just how it is in this realm. It's for them to know and for us to find out as we live. And they're saying that's why it's important to have faith. Faith is what connects you to the divine, to your purpose, to your soul, to all these pieces that we just talked about. Faith is what connects us to one another. Faith is the great equalizer. They're showing this reality where everyone has faith in something higher level in humanity, and it brings us together as opposed to tearing us apart. And it's really beautiful. It's led by Indigenous people. I feel like they're God's favorites. Because they understand. I'm struggling to accurately depict these. They're showing this big gathering of many different types of people, and this like stick type ritual item. It's made from wood and it has like beads and other things on it, and this elder is putting it down. It's cool. Each tribe or type of people is like a piece of a pie chart, and their people are all coming together, and this elder is putting it in the center. The stick is like in the center of everyone, and everyone's like bowing down. There's no speaking because everyone is equal. I think they're talking about something in the past because they said those were the days. I do know that at least American like Native people had like summits with different tribes and things for peace. I've been to in Colorado, there's like this plain where they would meet, and the energy was just magnificent there. My moon sign also runs through Colorado, so that's why I'm talking about it a lot. I feel like all the things that they want to say are more about the state of the world right now and not about the topic at hand, and that's why they're not really saying a lot of things. I feel like they're sort of like, we don't need to worry too much about what happens when you die because it'll be fine. Everything is fine. Like, this isn't what you should be concerned about. That's not A1, like, number one information that we need to know. They're saying I did a pretty good job describing and talking about all the things. They're showing the Egyptians again. They're showing gold. Afterlife, resting place. There's more to be said on that. And we're not honoring the dead properly. More reverence. Understanding. Something like luminosity as well. It's too ostentatious. They're showing like a mausoleum. Too ostentatious. To understand. Too ostentatious to understand. Focusing on the wrong things. They keep showing like the pyramids. I don't know if you have seen that new discovery about those like pillars underneath the pyramid that go like super 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 deep, and like the different like compartments or chambers or whatever. They keep showing something like that. And it's funny because in my Animal Crossing game, I've expanded my house so to the maximum, so you get a basement, and my basement is like Egyptian sarcophagus themed, so they keep showing that. um they're saying if I ask the Egyptian deities, I'll get a different answer. And then they showed a fox, which is probably my Egyptian guide. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, for clarifying, hopefully for others. Hopefully I described what I was seeing the best of my abilities. I feel like I was channeling a little bit, so that was interesting. Okay. Um I was saying goodbye to them, and they were like bowing like super extra. Um Very interesting. I low key feel like Spirit was just like, it's not a big deal. Like, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Um, and a lot of what I said, they're showing like a bell, like it rings true. So let it sit for you. Figure it out. Use your discernment. If you don't like something that I said, that's okay. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to share what I believe and what I've experienced and what Spirit can share, and hopefully make your life easier or give you some food for thought. I know our ego, when we hear new information, especially because this is tied to religious stuff, our brain might be like, I reject this 100%. No, I don't believe in this. So don't pressure yourself. Let it sink in. See if it feels true in your body, despite what your brain and your programming from religion have told you. Because the initial might just be like, I reject. But as you sit on it over time, you might be like, maybe I believe in this. Maybe I'm open to this. I did like spiritual lifestyle coaching for this guy who didn't believe in any of that stuff, and then he saw a spirit, and he was like, my whole life has changed. What do I do with this? And so I did like a couple of sessions with him, talking to him about the afterlife and spirit and all my experiences, to help him figure out like how he wanted to integrate that into his own beliefs and his own spiritual path. So just know, like, belief is the hardest thing to change. And if you're finding resistance to this, that's okay. There's no pressure for you to believe what I believe. And just know, like, your ego might be like very triggered because you've built a lot of, like, if you grew up your whole entire life thinking that you're going to go to heaven if you're a good person and you just can't sin, and then I'm telling you like that doesn't exist, like that can be a really big shock. So, take with it what you will. And if this is giving you freedom because you're like, oh my God, yes, I knew it. Like, I knew this other thing wasn't correct. I had weird vibes about it. Great. Trust what you feel should be trusted. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. I always love talking about all of this stuff. So, yeah. See you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to your intuition and listening to the Empowered Intuitive podcast. I would absolutely love, love, love it if you could leave a review on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts, subscribe or follow the pod wherever you stream, and legit just tell all your spiritual baddie friends and fam about us. You can follow The Empowered Intuitive Pod on IG at The Empowered Intuitive Pod. For updates and fun memes, follow our host Love on IG and TikTok at Love Sakratoff. That's LOVESACHARTOFF. Or head to their website to subscribe to their newsletter, book a session, or attend an upcoming event with them at lovesakratoff.com. And remember, trust your intuition.